Hey guys, Waterfowler41 here, and in today's video we're going to be adding windshield washer fluid nozzles to my rear factory camera on the back of my Raptor, as well as one to my WOLFBOX camera on the rear of my truck. So one of the biggest issues I have, particularly in the winter, but in the summer it's an issue as well, is my cameras end up getting clouded up with road salt. And what ends up happening is when I go to back into the garage, which is a pretty tight fit, I rely a lot on my camera so I can see how close I can get to the wall. I basically need to be within 2 or 3 inches of the wall so that I know my truck clears that front door. And I can't do that when my rear camera is covered in salt because obviously you can't see. So then I have to have the kids go out. It's a real big hassle. Anyway, so what we're gonna be doing is installing some kits from ClearVu, which will allow me to add a windshield washer fluid nozzle right here so I could spray this guy, keep it clean, and I'll be able to have a nice clean view out that factory camera. Now we're gonna install 2 kits. If you do not have a WOLFBOX camera, you would be interested in one kit here, and that's the kit that's going to install the nozzle. The second kit that I'm going to install is it's going to add a nozzle on top of my WOLFBOX rear camera here so that I can do the same thing. It's just basically going to spray this guy with windshield washer fluid to keep that one clean. So ClearVu makes a whole bunch of different kits. We're going to be installing the one to add the nozzle for the factory camera, so if you're interested in that one, and then I'm going to be adding the second kit so I can add a nozzle to my WOLFBOX camera. The WOLFBOX one is universal, so it's basically any sort of car that has a WOLFBOX camera kit, it just clips on the top of that camera. The one that is specific to the Ford comes with a specific template and a nozzle, and that's what we'll be installing there. So let's get these guys out of the box. We'll take a look at what comes in the kit, get the truck fully pulled in, and we'll talk to the installation because it is a very easy install. All right, so here are the 2 kits as well as some tools that we're gonna need to install everything. Let's talk about the OEM kit. So this is the kit where you can add a new nozzle to your rear factory camera to spray windshield washer fluid on the camera lens to keep it clear. So in this kit, you get the little nozzle, you get an O-ring as well as a nut to attach this guy to the handle. You get a template, which shows you exactly where you need to drill the hole to fit this guy. You get a T-fitting, a check valve, as well as an on-off valve here, a little ball valve, as well as tubing. So what you could do is tap into your factory line, run that tubing where you need it to go, put your valves along the way, and then feed it right into this little nozzle here, which is gonna be in the handle. And then you know where the nozzle goes because you got this little template here. I'll show you how to use that in a bit. Now I have the WOLFBOX camera, so this is the other one that we're also gonna be installing. I'll be installing them at the same time. So the only difference here is instead of this little nozzle here, you get the WOLFBOX adapter nozzle. So you can see you attach your tubing up on top. This guy clips right up on top of the camera, and then there's a nozzle right inside, and it sprays windshield washer fluid down the front of the camera. You also get tubing on this one. You get your T-fitting, your valve, and then a couple check valves too, because you're gonna be running a longer length of tubing here. So here is my plan. My plan is to tap into the factory line, run a single tubing, probably about where the spare tire is at. Then from there, tee it off with the second tee here. One of those sides is going to go towards the WOLFBOX camera, which is above my license plate. The other one's going to feed up into the tailgate, and that's where we're going to install this guy. I am going to install this little this little shutoff valve inside the engine bay. That way, in the winter I could turn it on, in the summer I could turn it off. I really only want this for the winter because the salt spray tends to cover up those cameras quite a bit. In the summer, spring, I clean my truck a lot, so really not totally an issue. All right, so once we got the hood pop, we can locate our windshield washer fluid tubing. That is right here. We're gonna find a nice little clean length of tubing here. I'm gonna cut it, and then what we're gonna do is first install the little T-fitting that comes in the ClearVu kit, right about there. Gonna install an inch or 2 of tubing, and then we're gonna put that little valve on there. That way I could shut this on and off. Ultimately, I wanna be able to shut it off in the engine bay, not underneath the truck. That way, like I said, in the summer, when I don't really need it too much, I can shut it off down here so we're not wasting windshield washer fluid. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the fish tape, we're gonna run it all the way through the chassis to the rear, and then we're gonna hook up the tubing to it, and then we're gonna pull that tubing all the way through the chassis. And ultimately, what we're gonna wanna do is get it to right behind the rear front passenger wheel, and then we could pop it up on the fender or up on the rear wheel or up on the wheel liner, and then it'll pop up right about here and give us nice clean access. Hook it up to our new valve here, and then we're good to go for running tubing. All right, so we got our T-fitting installed. We got a little section of tubing here, and then we got our valve installed. The valve is closed right now. Ultimately, once fully installed, it's just gonna tip down like that, and I'll just kind of zip tie things up out of the way. But now the next thing we need to do is go get our electric fish tape, and what I'm gonna do is feed it from the front of the vehicle to the back. That way we could pull the tubing this way, pull up exactly what we need, leave the rest of the length at the back so we could trim it and get it connected here, and then we could shut down everything. All right, quick stock take as to where we're at. So instead of taking the fish tape, feeding it in from the front to the rear and then pulling the tubing this way, since it's one person here doing the job, it was easier for me to just feed everything from the front to the back. So right now, you can see I got my valve installed. I have the other end of the tubing installed on that. That tubing drops down behind this wheel liner. And then what I've been doing, let's go over here. What I've been doing is hopping underneath the truck and just slowly feeding the tubing from one section to the next. And I've been using some solid copper wire, some 12 gauge that I had from a home project, just basically jumping from one hole to the next hole. This stuff is really easy to pop in and out. Just basically slowly pulling it through the chassis here. So the reason I can't use the fish tape is there's a lot of like little pieces of metal inside the chassis that stops it, and it's not easy to get one full clean pull through there with just one person. So it's a lot easier with a single person doing this, just going hole by hole and just slowly working your way down chassis. All right, so we got our tubing run all the way to the rear of the chassis. It took a lot longer than I anticipated, mostly because I'm doing this by myself. And like I said, I was doing little segments at a time, so it was just kind of go about 2 feet, pull the hose through, go another 2 feet, pull the hose through. Anyway, we got it all out there. So basically what we're gonna do now is we're gonna clip this up underneath the bumper, give me maybe an extra foot of length there. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna install a T on there. So I'm gonna install this T, and then one of these fittings is gonna go in and feed the top of the WOLFBOX nozzle. So you can see I already have that guy set up, and all it does is just clips on top of the WOLFBOX rear camera. And then the other one is gonna feed into the tailgate, and it's gonna run through inside here up to the handle. We need to remove the handle so we could drill that hole, which is gonna go about here, which means we need to remove that panel here. But let's first get the WOLFBOX nozzle installed, get that one situated, and then we'll deal with the T for the factory camera in a second here. So, all right, so now we're underneath the hitch. So the hitch is right here. So this is the hose that is going towards the WOLFBOX camera nozzle. You can see I got my check valve. Make sure that the arrow is pointing towards the nozzle. It's basically a one-way valve. You want to keep fluid in there. You don't want it to backfeed. I got my T here, and then the other side of the T goes into the tube that was tapped into our main feed there up underneath the hood. So now that I have this T here, I'm just gonna kind of clean up everything, hold everything up here, and then ultimately what we're gonna do is now we're gonna feed this line. We're gonna attach a line here. It's gonna travel along this wire bundle. It's gonna go into the tailgate, and then it's gonna tie into the nozzle on the handle. But before we tie that hose all together, let's go ahead and get the tailgate down and pull the handle off, and I'll show you how to mark and drill your hole. I guess one little final product view of the WOLFBOX nozzle there. You can see just basically it's like a hood that sits on top of the camera, and then the nozzle's right up in there, and then once you hit the windshield washer fluid, it's just gonna spray it down there, wash it off, and then you got a nice clear view. So anyway, if you are installing just the WOLFBOX camera kit, this is it. You don't need to install that T. I would install that check valve there, though. You do want that there, but the installation's done now if you're just doing the WOLFBOX one. But if you're doing the OEM kit, follow along, because now we're gonna take a hose, we're gonna bring it behind the bumper here up into the middle of the tailgate, run it up, and it's gonna tie into that nozzle that goes right to the handle. All right, it is a new day. I did run out of daylight, and it was just getting too cold in the garage last night to finish the project, but morning, it's beautiful. Let's get back to work. Anyway, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna install the ClearVu nozzle on our factory handle. So this is the quote-unquote OEM kit. So basically this is, if you buy just this kit, it'll tee off of the factory hose under the hood, come up through the chassis, come up through the bottom of the tailgate, and then connect to a little nozzle, which is right here. So what we're gonna need to do is pull the tailgate down, pull the tailgate panel off, and then we're gonna need to remove the handle so that we can get this out, pull the wiring harness off of it so we could drill a hole roughly about here, pop our nozzle in there, connect our tubing, and then close everything up. All right, so once you have the tailgate open, you're gonna have to undo all of these screws because this panel is gonna have to come off. I have the Billebars panel, but if you have the factory one, you're gonna have to do the same thing. Then, once we pull that panel off, we're gonna have to hop inside here. We're gonna remove these two 10mm bolts. These are on the back side of the handle. And then what we're gonna do with a trim tool on one side and push it on the other side, we're gonna push the panel out. There's a couple clips around there, and I'll show you once we get it out where you need to push. But get these bolts or get these nuts off, push on the back side of the handle, and that should pop everything off. Once we get the handle out, then we can remove the wiring harness from it, remove the handle from the vehicle, and then we can get our hole marked and okay, so we got our tailgate panel off, and the reason you need to remove that is because you need to be able to slide the hose through the tailgate, zip tie it up to things so it's not dangling around, and then pass it through this hole down here. It's just a lot easier to do it with that guy off. Anyway, now what we're gonna do is turn our attention here. We're gonna get those two 10mm nuts off, and then let's get a light in on there. You see there's a white clip there. There's also one on this side. There's a few more on the bottom side of the handle. So what we're gonna do is get a really skinny tool in there, push down to at least start the handle from popping out, and then we're gonna pull on the other side just to carefully pop it out, but it's little plastic clips. Again, all right, so we got our handle popped out. This was super easy to remove. Again, once you remove those two 10mm nuts, be careful, you got some washers there. All I did is I took a flathead and I pushed on the top plastic clip. I pushed straight down on one side, it popped one side out, pushed straight down on the other side, it popped the other one out. There's only two clips on each side holding this guy on. So now the next thing we need to do is remove this wiring harness, which is just a bunch of push little tree clips. Here, little plug into the camera here, plug into the actuator. Once we remove that, then we could get this guy off the vehicle. I suppose you could drill the hole without removing it, but it's going to be easier to get this thing off the vehicle. So let's get the harness off there, get this over on the workbench, mark a hole, and drill it. Okay, so we have our handle off of the truck here, so now it's easier to work on. We're going to find our template here. So this one says 10, so I believe that aligns with the model on the truck, but I believe you could go onto their website and download the template if it does not come in your kit. But anyway, all we're going to do is line it up with the edge of this little seam here, and that little hole on the tab, on the little template, is right where we want to mark our hole to drill. So it's going to be a, what is it, a 5/16 hole? Yep, we're going to drill a 5/16 hole wherever this template is telling us to do. So let's get a piece of tape on there, mark our hole. We're going to use a hole punch just to make sure it's exactly where it needs to be. Then we're going to go ahead and use a step bit since it's just plastic. It'll go through there, give us a nice clean hole. And the reason they provide a template is because there's so much going on the back side of these handles. You want to make sure that you're avoiding any of these supports. So that nozzle is going to go right here. All right, so we got our nozzle installed there. Make sure that you have it directed directly at your camera so it's going to clean it off properly, but you can just see the back there, just pokes through. That template gives you a nice little easy area to get the nozzle through and make sure that it clears everything. Now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and take this 1/2" plastic or a little nylon nut, install this on the back side of it, and then ultimately after we run our tubing, it's going to connect right to the back of here. But we are going to want to run a little section of tubing first, then put a check valve on there since we are going up. We don't want that fluid to constantly drain, so that we got to hang on the windshield wiper motor for a little while till it primes up. So we're going to put a little piece of hose on there. We're going to put another check valve here. This guy's going to land somewhere inside the tailgate, and then the rest of the hose we're going to connect it down to that T, and then we are done with this project. So let's go ahead and get that tubing run. All right, so we got all the harness plugged back in, all the push pins put where they need to go. Be cognizant of where you're running the tubing. You can actually tuck it underneath the factory harness, which allows you to push it right down into this direction of the tailgate. So now all we need to do is just kind of feed this guy right down there, line these two up with this hole here, make sure it's aligned, and then get this fully clipped in and installed, and then we can go inside the tailgate, run the tubing, and then we're done. All right, so we got our tubing run, so you can see it's coming off of the nozzle back. We got our check valve. We made sure it's installed the right direction. Again, you want the arrow pointing in the direction of the flow, so towards the nozzle on the handle. Then I have the tubing run, cuts through the tailgate right here, and you see the rest of the length is right here. So all I need to do now is pop it through this hole. I'm going to zip tie it to the back of this wire bundle just so it stays in place, and then we're going to tie it into our T down there, and then we are good to go. So let's get that tailgate cover back on. I will leave a link to that one because I get a lot of questions on this. Billebars, this is an awesome tailgate cover. When you're hopping up in and out of your tailgate, it's a knee saver. The one that comes on the truck from the factory sucks. The ones with this little soft padding on here is awesome, especially if you're hopping in and out, especially if you got kids that are hopping in and out. You can see we got hockey bags in there right now. All right, anyway, so we're back up underneath the truck here, and I got everything tucked up and away. You can see my check valve. This is the one that is going to the WOLFBOX camera, and then we got our T line. This is what's going to my tailgate camera. I'm sorry, yeah, tailgate camera nozzle, and then the main supply line goes up here, pops into the chassis, and then goes towards the front of the truck. Make sure when you're zip tying things, you're not pulling the zip ties too tight. Remember, this is hose, and you don't want to kink it. The whole point is to promote flow. If you pull the zip ties too tight, you're going to pinch the lines, and you're going to cause issues. You're not going to get the flow that you want on the nozzle. So anyway, now what I'm going to do is go to the front of the truck, turn on that valve, and I might actually pinch the factory windshield wiper so I can force more fluid back here, and then we can take a look at how these guys work.
All right, so let's take a look at how the OEM camera nozzle functions. Looks like it's working pretty well. All right, let's take a look at the WOLFBOX one now.
Nice and clean. Sweet. So it looks like everything's working well. So again, I have the valve installed underneath the engine bay. The reason I have that there is because in the winter I need this, but in the spring and summer, not really a thing. So now this gives me the ability to shut off, because you can see that it gives the nozzles, or it gives the camera a pretty healthy spray of windshield washer fluid. Now I have been testing it, so it's all over the place, but so we don't waste windshield washer fluid in the months that we really don't need it. That valve is nice, so I could turn those things off. But anyway, that's how you install the ClearVu factory camera nozzle, as well as the WOLFBOX one. So if you have a WOLFBOX camera on any other brand truck, doesn't even need to be an F-150, that's the installation process. Super simple. Tee off from your main supply line up underneath your hood, run the tubing to the back, and then pop the hood onto your camera wherever it's at. But if you are running the OEM kit, you obviously got to pull the tailgate handle off, pull the harness off, drill your 5/16 hole, pop it in there. But by all accounts, a very easy and super doable project. I will leave a link to these guys down in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. I'll check you guys in the next one. Got some huge projects coming up, hopefully in spring here.